Bitcoin continues showing strength, hovering around $52,000 over the long weekend as the fiat world continues to decay. We see China's foreign investments collapsing and Japan entering a technical recession. Plus, Edward Snowden makes a bold pro-Bitcoin take. Meanwhile, Coinbase discontinues accepting on-chain Bitcoin transactions from self-custodial wallets. Is one more interest rate hike in the cards for the Fed? It's time to jump on the lifeboat, people. Let's do it. Welcome to the Tuesday, February 20th edition of the Bitcoin Daily Show. I'm Dante Cook, head of Swan Business. Here at Swan, we're on a mission to educate the world about Bitcoin. So please like this video and subscribe to the channel. It'll help us break through the noise on YouTube and teach more and more people about Bitcoin. Also, for the first time on Friday, we announced that we have a daily@swanbitcoin email address to answer any questions that people have regarding buying Bitcoin, custodying Bitcoin, questions about hash rate or wallets or anything else. It's been amazing to see how many questions have come in. And I think people are a little bit shocked to see that I'm actually responding to their emails. I am. I'm looking at every one of them and I'm giving you the best advice that I can. And for those of you out there who think this is just a way for us to funnel more people into Swan products, it's not. I'm recommending other products and services when it's right for other people. We do what's right for Bitcoin and what's right for Bitcoiners, and we're glad to help you on your journey. So if you have any questions, feel free to send an email to daily@swanbitcoin.com and I'll answer the email personally. And with that, we're into today's episode. The 2024 NBA All-Star Weekend was hosted here in my city, Indianapolis. And I was trying to tell people that the snowstorm that they received was actually the first of the year. Everyone was like, yeah, right. You guys have snow all the time. But regardless of that, Indy showed why it's one of the best sports cities in the world, bar none. My favorite thing from the event was that Damian Lillard got the praise and the accolades that he deserves. The eight-time All-Star won his first MVP in the All-Star game and also won the three-point shooting contest.
Oh, you gotta get me one. Daytime.
I couldn't believe this, but Dame is the first person to win the three-point championship back-to-back since Jason Capono in 06-07. Dame is open anytime he steps into the arena, even from half court.
That was the Motor Speedway flat tire. Oh my God. Y'all see this?
And like Dame, real Bitcoin is open and available 24/7, 365. Unlike the ETFs, real Bitcoin is accessible to you anytime that you need it. Your life doesn't stop on Friday night. For most of you, that's when it just starts. Speaking of ETFs, BlackRock continues to be the most creative of the ETF issuers, creating new ads like this one here that they did for institutional investors and RIAs that use their products. They've even started cooking up cool and fun little quizzes like this one that they've done for mass retail consumers. Marketing like this is leading massive attention and inflows into these ETF products. According to one of the best ETF follows on Twitter, Hodl15 Capital, we've seen over $5 billion in flows into these new ETFs in the last month alone. However, fiat opportunists like Mike Green continue to provide bad takes on the ETF launches and Bitcoin in general. Like we always say on this show, don't listen to what people say or how smart they sound. Just look at their actions. Or, in Bitcoin terminology, don't trust, verify. And there's one thing that we can verify about Mike Green or Simplify Asset Management, is that their funds do not perform very well. Out of the 26 funds listed on their website, 23 of them are underperforming the market by a wide margin. Do you want to know what the best performing fund is that he has listed on his website? It's the Bitcoin Plus Income Fund, Maxi. In reality, Mike, Bitcoin is the only thing in Simplify's asset management funds that's keeping your returns from being completely abysmal. But you know what? That's the game theory of Bitcoin. You can choose to ignore it, but sooner or later, you're going to have to make a decision about how you want to deal with it personally, or for governments around the world, how they're going to deal with it and their bad policy takes about it over the last several years. For many governments around the world, their tune is changing because of the success of the ETFs. Governments from Japan, South Korea, and the UK are changing their policies on Bitcoin and allowing them to be held because of the success of the ETFs. Why else might their tunes be changing towards Bitcoin? Well, for one, liquidity is drying up globally, and there are demographic challenges structurally in economies everywhere. And there's a lack of GDP growth, leading to recessions all over the world. Let's take China, for example. Chinese government officials are looking everywhere for liquidity. Foreign direct investments into their country have hit the lowest number that they've seen since the early 1990s. As we've been highlighting the challenges in China over the last several weeks, there's a lack of confidence in investors domestically and now, as you can see, internationally as well. As we mentioned last week, Bitcoin denominated in the Japanese yen has hit all-time highs. When you contrast with this data that Japan is in a recession, you can see why that they're looking for Bitcoin as a source of growth in their economy. And finally, we head to Europe. If you look at most of the major markets in the European economy, most of them have no growth, and many of them have low growth, if not negative growth, and entering into a recession with 2 straight negative quarters of GDP growth. Over the last 40 years, markets around the world have been globally connected together. And so when something happens at one part of the world, it negatively impacts other things across the world. And you know what's running rampant all across the globe right now? Inflation. That's why the options market is pricing in a 6% chance that the Fed won't decrease rates, but actually have a rate hike in the next upcoming meeting. The markets know what we've been saying all along. Jay Powell is fearful of runaway inflation. If inflation gets out of hand, any of the policy levers that he have will be ineffective. He has to solve for inflation first. Speaking of inflation, all of the gold bug talking heads out there have said that gold has been the best inflation hedge for the last 5,000 years. I beg to differ. You see, one of the challenges of gold, beyond the fact that you can't actually audit all of the full amount of gold out there, is that when demand goes up, people bring more supply online. In theory, there could be an unlimited supply of gold. You know what else also has an unlimited supply? Ethereum. I love how Fidelity continues to take a crypto and digital assets approach to all of their marketing content, but in reality, we all know that they're Bitcoiners. And in the latest example of Fidelity showing their Bitcoin cards, they highlight the difference between Ethereum and Bitcoin plain in a table and chart for you to see. And with that, we're going to enter into our final segment, where we always want to highlight the difference between real Bitcoin, Bitcoin that you can purchase in ETFs, and Bitcoin held by exchanges. For those of you out there who are newer to this sort of content, or are unfamiliar with the 1933 Gold Reserve Act or Executive Order 6102, they don't maybe believe that something like this could happen in America, but there's already precedent for it happening. And with platforms like Coinbase, custodying Bitcoin for 9 out of the 10 ETFs, or much of the retail Bitcoin out there, this is entirely possible. And then you pair this with information that Coinbase won't actually accept on-chain transactions from self-custodied wallets, but only from Bitcoin wallets that are hosted through their platform. You realize that they don't want you to opt out of the system. They are making it easier and easier for you to buy, store, and send Bitcoin through their rails. Even open source freedom maxis like Jason Fried from Basecamp are being sucked in through their marketing schemes. He believes that he's receiving independent money, but he's really receiving a co-opted token. So here's my real message. Buy real Bitcoin.
At any point, would you sell? When would it make sense to take profits there?
Well, I've famously said I'm going to be buying the top forever. Bitcoin is the exit strategy. It is the strongest asset. So what we see right now is the Bitcoin has just emerged as a $1 trillion asset class. And it's alongside names like Apple and Google and Microsoft. But the difference between Bitcoin and the Magnificent Seven is Bitcoin's an asset class. It's not a company. There's not enough room in the capital structure of those companies to hold $10 trillion or $100 trillion worth of capital. So Bitcoin's competing against gold, which is 10x what it is right now. It's competing against the S&P index. It's competing against real estate, a $100 trillion plus asset class, as a store of value. So we believe capital is going to keep flowing from those asset classes into Bitcoin because Bitcoin is technically superior to those asset classes. And that being the case, there's just no reason to sell the winner to buy the losers.
If you watch the dunk contest on Saturday night, buying real Bitcoin versus other forms is sort of like comparing Mac McClung's dunks to Jaylen Brown. When all of the theatrics, marketing, and gimmicks go out the window, you realize that there's only one contestant that has real substance to it. I predicted Mac McClung would be the dunk champion too, by the way. People holding real Bitcoin will be the winners over the long term. And to be a successful investor generally, there's two things that you need: conviction and patience. Don't be so concerned with the number go up technology that you neglect the freedom go up technology. That's the true innovation of Bitcoin. People like Edward Snowden would know. Here's what Edward had to say. Unpopular but true. Bitcoin is the most significant monetary advance since the creation of coinage. If you don't believe me or don't get it, I don't have time to try to convince you. Sorry. Edward's definitely gone down the rabbit hole because the last part of his tweet was from Satoshi himself. Let us all be reminded of the importance of freedom today, as Julian Assange's lawyers take to court in the UK to plead against his extradition back to the US. Exposing the truth should not be considered a crime. And with that, we're signing off for the day. I'm Dante Cook with Swan.com. Stay humble and stack sats.